Hello, welcome to another episode of CAPISAR Podcast, and I have the astrologer Nicholas Polimenakos with me to do one of your favorite episodes, which is the monthly forecast for December 2025. And another important thing is we are gearing up to do this annual forecast episode as well. So that will be a surprise guest for you. So I'll leave that uh, with this here. And then thanks, Nicholas, for joining me. We have a few announcements to make, which is regarding CAPISAR's consulting skills and ethics awareness training. But before that, if you need any more information, you can visit capisar.org, which is their website, and you can subscribe to their newsletter, which is info@capisar.org. So, yeah,
Yeah, let's
the
actually
email.
let's
Yeah,
pull this up on the screen too, just to show everybody, Aswin. And hey, by the way, it's great to be back. It's
sure.
good to be back here talking with you. But yeah, let's share this here. Um, this is the consulting skills training that CAPISAR is doing with Catherine Goshen, Lori Santacito. If I said that right, I
Yeah,
hope.
I think there's a murder.
Yeah. It's happening February 13th to the 15th, 2026. Uh, an amazing consulting skills class. Ashwin, I think I'm going to be in this class.
Cool.
I'm going to join in on this class too, and I think the other one too that we're going to talk about. But this is happening here. These all times are Eastern time. February 13th, they do the intro from 3 to 5. They kind of like gradually put you in the consulting skills. And then the next several days, you're doing the experiential learning. So you're doing things together as a group and kind of putting yourself out there on stage as the
Yeah.
practitioner and learning and getting some consulting skills training. So
Yeah, I think there is a lot of effort that's gone into all these things for the past 1 year. CAPISAR has been kind of getting their act together, especially in terms of all these trainings. Catherine Goshen, I've seen firsthand the kind of work that she puts in. I'm sure Laurie is also amazing.
yeah.
So I think it's important for people to take advantage of the time, energy, and also the brilliance of people who are doing this. And there is also a payment plan option to make it more easier for people.
Yes, and it's the first time they've added this too. So they have, I think they're gonna add it, if I put it here correctly, they have it's 350 US, but they do have a payment plan they can put up on there. I'm gonna make sure that's up there. I think you can do it in 2 payments. And this, oh, there it is. It's just an enrollment. There's a payment plan here. And I'll just click over on this just as we're a user. You could see here how they split it up here into 3 payments actually. If you want to do that, you can to make it easier. That's what actually made me do this, is to make it a lot easier for me to do the classes. And honestly, I've done some training before and had some workshops, but considering I'm on a CAPISAR YouTube channel, Aswin, I thought I should represent and go through this counseling skills training. And plus, Catherine's an amazing astrologer and facilitator. So I
Yeah,
definitely was like, this is a rare thing, and I wanted to take advantage of it. And hopefully, anybody watching, if you're interested in there, go to capisar.org. We'll put the direct link into the copy down below. And
sure.
yeah, yeah. Which
Experiential training doesn't get better.
Nope, doesn't get better than that. And it's, sometimes one can be in fear of that because you're showing how you do your astrology in front of everybody and having to share it. But from past experience, this is where I've learned the most. And it's great to hear from other astrologers and you know their history of their skills and their training and what to do in
Yeah,
certain types of situations and how to handle different client challenges and situations. So,
sure. Yeah, it's an eye opener.
yeah, yep. Which leads us, Aswin, to February 28th, because the other part of being a CAP, to get your certificate there, they have 3 modules that CAPISAR has. One of them
Yeah,
is what we just looked at, the consulting skills. And one of the other modules is the ethics awareness training and the exam. So that happens on February 28th. It's a 1 day one-day training, and then you take the test. So
Yeah, that is by Tara All.
and you know Tara.
Yeah, she's a long distance sister for me. We wrote a book together, and that led us to so many other beautiful places. But I'm not saying this because she's my friend, but Tara has a really strict ethical guideline in her work, and I see that almost every week. So
Yep.
it's amazing. So it will be, and she's a great teacher. We teach together for Kepler, and she's a brilliant teacher, and I don't know, I cannot recommend this more. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I'm going to be in this one too. So
Oh,
yeah, it's going to be a busy February, and I think for a lot of us. But yeah, again, if you're interested in all this, you can go to capisar.org. You could see the trainings there. You could see what the organization's about, the certification, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we'll put those links down below.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, December,
That
Ashwin.
takes us to, brings us back to December 2025. So let's come back. So, yeah, I think the feature has been Mercury's retrograde period that's kind of coloring and shaping all our weeks since November the 9th, when Mercury turned retrograde. And I think we are kind of gearing up to Mercury stationing direct, and Saturn is also stationing direct by the end of this month,
Mhm.
which releases a lot of topics that have been under the grind for a long period of time with Saturn's retrograde, and now with Mercury retrograde. I think the knots are slowly being untied.
Yep, I agree with you, and it's always interesting in situations like this. Usually, when something like a Mercury retrograde is stationing, it's not necessarily with another planet stationing here, but they're tied into each other because they're both in water signs and part of this grand water trine narrative that's happening. While we're recording this video, Ashwin, right? We're doing a grand water trine with Venus in Scorpio and Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces, and Mercury's right there, and then here we are. We have, like you said, I like what you said, the unwinding of the knots. Is that what you said? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
the knots are being untied.
The knots are being untied. Yeah, so it's interesting here to have this at the end of the month and as we go into December, and I think some of that unwinding still, obviously happens as we go into the beginning weeks of December. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think the key aspects would be, I think it starts with Venus sextile Pluto, but I think the real deal begins with full moon in Gemini.
Yeah, on the fourth here, I
Yeah,
agree with you. I think considering it's that Mercury's still, stationing and then moving forward, and the next big lunation within days is Mercury based. Uh,
correct.
it all makes sense to me. Like, might as well do it this way, the story and the narrative this way. And so
Yeah,
yeah, so could start there, and I could pull up the chart here. Let me get this together here. But as a Gemini, I'm always excited. Personally, I'm a Gemini. I'm excited whenever there's a lunation in my sign, and as a Sagittarius, are you excited?
sure. Yeah. I mean, Sagittarians are always excited.
uh, I had some fun with this one, but yeah, let me pull this one up here, and then here's the full moon that happens. It happens here where I am in the Pacific time zone at 3:14 p.m. It happens and we're going to deal with 24-hour time clock at 18:13, correct?
Yeah,
What do you see? What's the first thing that
it
pops out to
should be.
you, Ashwin?
I think the most important thing that kind of hits me here is this the Venus moon opposition, and also Mars on the other side, with the with the full moon. So that's very interesting. And as you mentioned, Mercury ruling the lunation itself is one of the most interesting things. But still, Mercury is still not directly connected with the moon, which kind of says that we are still kind of lying. Although there is culmination, but I think there is still a little bit of groundwork that needs to be done. We are still not completely dealt with the water memories that Mercury is rekindling or kind of stirring with this grand water trine that we are dealing with. So there is a lot of memories. There is a lot of past that is influencing our current, but there is also this conscious thought or kind of an effort to make sure that this past is not going to completely color our future, because future should be dependent on where it is headed, and we don't need to necessarily influence or force anything from the past into our future. So some of the memories or difficult memories that we are dealing with, especially with Mercury in Scorpio, the deep transformative experiences or the depths of emotions that we are reaching, I think we are kind of slowly letting things go. It's a very powerful period. This Mercury retrograde itself, I think, is has been very powerful for a lot of people at an emotional level. And I think we are still kind of slowly letting go a lot of things. And this full moon is most likely the culmination, with uh, slight scars here and there that are still left. But I think by the time the full moon will be over and Mercury enters Sagittarius, I think there is a lot of hope for all of us to enter into this 2026 with more conviction than we ever had since Saturn turned retrograde in July.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too because you have the Sun and Mars and Venus and Sagittarius, and they just want to have that bigger picture and to start to move forward, right? It just
Yeah,
so happens that Mercury isn't quite there yet in Sagittarius, and it still is dealing with the past and the tying up with things, and moving really slow right now. But I think people, to use a quote, can see the light or see the path ahead all of a sudden, and maybe they didn't see it for the
correct.
last several weeks. But it doesn't mean that some of the things that Mercury has done during the retrograde with its relationship to Jupiter and Saturn and Pisces and having to relive or recount and revise possibly the past and you know those that knot that you were talking about to unwind it happens at a certain pace, and I think Mercury dictates that pace. But
Sure.
with any full moon there are things that are shown and exposed, and
Hmm.
maybe it's not so private in the Mercury and Scorpio realm now that it's just starting to move forward and that Mercury rules this moon. And so there is, I think, a discussion, an outward discussion that happens. It could be with one person or several people, or maybe the Mercury and Scorpio finally can put the words and maybe start to say something out loud. And so I think here in a situation like this, I think anything too, when we're dealing with a lot of mutability, is in one sense, can we find the advantage of Mercury being in Scorpio that's been hyper focused and very investigative in its doings during the retrograde? And with everything that's mutable, sometimes we need something that's very clear, right? And
Yeah.
like you have Moon and Gemini, and you have all the Sagittarius. There's a tendency to not just talk about one thing or two things, several things, many things. But I think
Yeah.
Mercury here keeps the story online and is extracted during the retrograde, extracted the heart of something, the heart of the water trine, and and anything in Scorpio will keep things very pinpointed and focused. So, in that sense, I see that. The other thing that I see here, though, and I think this ties into a nodal story and an eclipse story, is basically the moon is squaring the nodes pretty much exactly here.
Yeah.
If anybody's been following the nodal story during the lunation, this isn't for me that's in play, and so anybody who's
I
been
think
affected
the
by
most
the
important thing here,
yeah. yeah, it's an interesting chart, don't you think, Ashwin? Like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the moon in the bending is the most important thing here. Uh, I also, I mean, it's very interesting because Mercury, the ruler of this lunation, is still yet to kind of hit the exact trine with Jupiter and Saturn, which happens 2 days after the lunation. So,
Yes.
which is which is the key for us to know that we are most certainly moving forward, especially in terms of dealing with the comfort level at which we are in terms of processing all these memories, and also in terms of revisiting our old structures and trying to kind of take the best out of it and come out as quickly as possible, because Saturn in Pisces is another opportunity for us. Obviously, Saturn in Pisces is all about crumbling of structures or old elements that were kind of shaping our lives. But Saturn's entry into Aries was a different thing. It was all of us trying to take initiatives or trying to find out the newer structures or build new structures around us. And Saturn in Pisces is an opportunity for us to go back and pick the best of the crumbled structures and come back with a little bit of good things from there. And I think Mercury trine Saturn is going to help us give this logical or rational loophole to see what to carry forward and what to completely leave behind. And that is the lesson that we are going to take from this retrograde Mercury, and possibly the trigger point is from this lunation where everything culminates, and from there it is only the forward movement, especially with the moon in Gemini. You mentioned about the mutability, which is a brilliant point. So I think somewhere we are kind of feeling a little tied up. Like on the one hand, we are pulled to kind of go towards this familiarity because of the North Node in Pisces, and on the other hand, there is this South Node in Virgo, which again calls for this detachment or some kind of forceful detachment or distillation or further more filtering in terms of what we have to let go of. So there is this constant battle, but I think as soon as the moon moves away from these nodes, things will start clearing up. And with Mercury trining Saturn and Mercury, I think the story kind of very nicely culminates for us to take charge of our lives.
Yeah, I feel you on that, Ashwin. It's interesting here at the end of the year to have this full moon, right? And we're talking about the recent retrograde, but then we're talking about something bigger, what we dealt with this year astrologically with even
Yeah.
earlier in the year with Saturn being in Pisces when it was back then, and the eclipses that we had back then. And so some deeper stories here. So I think there's the layer of the recent weeks of the Mercury retrograde, and there's a bigger layer here that's going on. I think that's connected, really towards an ending here of Saturn being in Pisces, and how it's
Yeah.
tied into the eclipses too, and so on and so forth. And yeah, and here we are. We have a lunation that's ruled by Gemini, or moon in Gemini, and Mercury rules it, and Mercury does rule that south node in this lunation also.
Uh,
So I really
Correct.
like what you've said about this stuff here, and what we're going to talk about for the rest of the forecast, how it does unfold.
Yeah.
And I'm a Saturnian type of individual. I can be very cynical in my views, but I feel pretty good how the unfolding is going to happen here when we start looking at the rest of the month. So
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
So
anyway.
do you want to talk a little bit about moon opposing Mars as being part of this lunation? Mars is also very much there,
Yeah, let's do it.
part of
Let's
the
do it.
lunation, because
I'm glad you
yeah,
brought this up because I was looking yesterday, and by declination, Mars, and I think in a couple days after we make this video, is going to be out of bounds. Like Mars is going to be out of bounds all the way to the beginning of January, and I think it's the secret planet of the month of like the amount of like unfiltered power of wherever way it goes. So
yeah,
let me pull up the chart again. I'm glad you brought this up because again I was checking out. So anyway, we're just here in the full moon. We're pointing out Mars here. at 22 degrees, and there's the moon. But what did you want to say about that, Ashwin?
Uh, I think it's the emotional overload of, still dealing with the backdrop of all this emotional overload that we have kind of processed or still kind of slightly burdened with it. And the energy or the motivation to kind of move forward after lying very low for all this time is very high at this point. And I think Mars is out of bounds, where basically it's very strong and uncontrollable, because remember, Mars is also approaching its sign of exaltation. So there is this element of unpredictability in our force, action, and our approach towards desire. So I think the key would be to not be emotionally attached with what we do, and also not be emotional about where we are headed. So it will be important to bring in a little bit of rationalism and control our action and desire. So it is not necessary that we need to go very fast. I know, like, after being jailed for at least 2 or 3 months, the moment the gate opens, it is the natural instinct is to fly and run as
Yeah.
quick as possible. But there are a little bit of blocks here and there, and we should be very careful uh, in terms of the speed that we are headed. So we can walk forward, but we need to be, we need to have our eyes wide open, and it's important not to be emotional about things, and we should try and be a lot more rational, especially with Mercury entering Sagittarius. Rationalism in general is not the most strongest point, but I think we will be able to find rationalism if we stick to philosophical areas
Hmm.
of what is happening instead of looking at things at the very ground or mundane level. I believe that philosophical orientation will give us a little bit of wisdom in terms of how this month is going to unfold for us.
I think it's interesting here. You're bringing up rationalism, and I totally get what you're saying. With Mars here, we're just wanting to push in one direction, a lot of directions possibly, because it's like you said, it was jailed up. But
Yeah,
I think, for something like a full moon like this and what we're gearing to the next several days, how Mars is going to be moving and the aspects it's going to make,
yeah,
I think the slowing down is great advice here. If I were to look for a way to I don't want, it's hard to go tell people like, let's say you're Sagittarius and you're like, it's your birthday season, and Venus is there, Mars is there. You're going to tell a Sagittarius to slow down? It's like they don't want to hear it. They're going to try to tell you to like, come on, let's go. So I can understand that, but we do have to take things into account here. And I think here to remember where we are water-wise in the chart and where Mercury is in all of this. I think we do get the enthusiasm later, and we get to run down the path eventually. But
yeah.
here, yeah, I could see how it can be a little volatile here for this one. And it just depends on the person or the situation if they're wanting to burst and run. But we still got these old stories getting tied up with the retrograde. And, I think here secretly too, I mean, we have to say this. I mean, we mentioned Saturn here, and we just got to mention, we got to mention Jupiter here, because in the background of all this, we do mathematically on paper do have an amazing Saturn Jupiter trine. I mean, if one is wanting to move in a certain way at a certain pace, there's ones that need to slow down. The one thing we can look and depend on is Jupiter and Saturn talking to each other and providing a basis for the bigger picture and the bigger path and vision. And this Jupiter situation feeds Mars here in Can. And if I were to tell a Sagittarius situation like, hey, hold up a second, I know you're excited. And they're like, come on, I'm feeling good, you're getting in my way. And like, well, hold on, you can make this last even longer if we slow down. And let's say we take a Saturn and Jupiter approach of really looking at the foundations, tying up those loose ends in the water parts of our chart, the past. But while we do that, the overlapping thing of taking a step forward, we can make this last longer instead of
Correct.
running down the path at top speed, So it's a type of thing for me. It's hard sometimes, especially with full moons and lunations, if we are caught up emotionally and then it's mutable moon, we can really get sidetracked, like you said, emotionally right there. And then Mars is out of bounds. So, again, if
Yeah.
anybody's watching this and it happens to be the full moon and there's a lot going on and you happen to catch this, it's good. So you could slow down for a couple days at least, or well, I'll say until maybe after the 8th. We'll get to that maybe. We'll talk about that next, I guess, these couple things. But I'm
Yeah, I
glad you
think
brought up the Mars thing.
exactly. Yeah, I think you mentioned an important thing with Saturn and Jupiter, like, but Saturn is also going to square Mars very quickly. So,
Yeah.
but my thought here is that we still have this opportunity to balance limitation and expansion that is signified by Saturn and Jupiter. So, when Jupiter and Saturn are squaring, there is conflict between the limitation and expansion. So, when we are moving forward with a view to expand, I think Saturn's limitation can feel a little conflicting or frustrating. But
Yeah.
with Trine, I think there is this emotional presence, especially in water, where we are leaning towards embracing the limitation despite the idea of expanding. So there is this nice balance that is created. But on the other hand, there is Mars squaring Saturn, which again puts some kind of a break. So I think slowing down, I'm just trying to kind of back up and solidify the idea that why slowing down is very important. Jupiter and Saturn trine is good for the long run, and Saturn and Mars square is good for us to kind of take some time and breathe
Yeah.
and move slowly and then be there. As you mentioned, just slowing down is actually good in the long run. So I just wanted to kind of substantiate what you said.
Yeah, no, no, no. It's again, it's fascinating. I hear to have this push-pull or stories ending and it's getting a hint of something else coming ahead, and those kinds of things, and how we do that dance here in the beginning of
Yes.
December, and how we move, and can we recognize that? Again, though, you're gonna tell somebody that's full of fire to stop. It's like it's always interesting to watch that if they can do it. But then again, even if someone doesn't want to hear it and they want to run, you can't run. You can't. I don't think one can run away from Saturn. And there's something there that happens that slows you down anyway. So it's you want to be the person that somehow you're somewhat driving the car, or do you have to have something throw something right in front of you where you're forced to stop? Yeah, but who knows how it happens to some people. I mean, if we think about this too, I mean, we were talking about the full moon in Gemini that happens on the 4th. We were mentioning the Mercury trine Jupiter aspect.
Yeah,
I'll
and
pull,
Saturn as well.
yeah, I'll pull that up here really quick. We could take a look at it here. Um, and so
It
here,
looks like we kind of covered a lot of aspects surrounding the lunation.
yeah, we did. We kind of did. So we could do show here really quick though, mathematically, that it
Sure.
happens on December 6th, 5:04 a.m. Pacific time at 24 degree. You could see right here. I'll do the annotation really quick. There's 24-degree Mercury, and there is Jupiter here, 24 degrees. That day, we have the little different release from Gemini. We got the moon in Cancer there. Is about to make a conjunction with Jupiter here
Oh, it's
too.
it's almost a good election here if you see, like
Yeah.
rising sign at 14
Oh,
degrees
this
and
particular thing, yeah, because you're looking at why? Because it's the Scorpio ascendant and the moon's sort of at the top of the chart. We're dealing with a waxing. Yes.
yes, and
Yeah.
also Jupiter is in Cancer,
Yeah.
the lord of the rising sign. It's see, speaking from a strict electional astrology rules, both moon and the lord of sorry Mars is the lord of the rising sign. Moon is still cadent in the ninth house, which indicates decline. But this is very good for spiritual progress, and spiritual progress in the sense I just sent my last week's weekly letter. where I gave an election for some kind of a spiritual release and progress. But the reason why this is very good for spiritual progress is because the ninth house is very, very strong, and spiritual progress doesn't have to be following a strict religion or some
Uh-huh.
kind of religious routine. It can be anything that gives you satisfaction, and satisfaction should come from not expecting something out of giving something. So living is giving, and giving something without expecting anything in return is also a spiritual activity. And if you can engage in doing something for the community or the greater good for the
Yeah.
community or even the greater good for yourself, I think it is a very good chart, like
Maybe it
5 a.m.
happens through food. Like, you got a cancer moon, like a feeding something, feeding here without expectation.
Yeah,
Here it is, and goodbye. And but just for those watching, in this case, Ashwin's talking about the ninth house here. So if you were to do an election, depending on where you are, what time zone where you are in the
yes,
world, you would have to put Scorpio on the ascendant. But I'm thinking there might be another election possibly here too. If it would switch up
yeah,
something though, if you would have put another water sign on the ascendant, but catching this
correct.
Jupiter at the top of the chart here, kind of up there. So, yeah, that's a good
Yeah, it's a
catch.
random pick.
Yeah, it's a random pick. Yeah, that is. And then
It's very interesting.
yeah, no, it is. And unexpected here, and I like it. Um, and so while we do that, while we're there, I might as well just go into what happens, there by chance. So we stick with something here, and the chart's going to change here. And here's when we're dealing with, at least December 7th, where I am, Mercury trining Saturn now. So we're having this within days or less than 24 hours. There is Saturn at 25 degrees, and you see Mercury there. And look where the moon is,
Yeah,
conjunct Jupiter. And you know what's interesting about this,
yeah,
Ashwin? Is this particular degree of 25 degrees. And the reason is because when we hit next June, that's where we're going to have the Jupiter Venus conjunction in Cancer is going to be at 25 degrees. And I'm only
yeah,
saying this for anybody, I think, who has water at like 25 degrees, and there's so much activity happening in those degrees here this month and everything, that sometimes I think, this goes back to the story, Ashwin, of like all the Sagittarius stuff wants to move forward, and they kind of see it and they feel it, but we kind of have to slow down because what we're coming out of with Mercury. And
sure.
and Saturn's just stationing. It's not even moving yet. It's just kind of sitting there. Jupiter's retrograde, but it's at this degree. But sometimes if we want to have it, we just finished up water stories and we just shed our tears and we had to go through some hard, maybe darker doom feelings with the type of stuff that comes with Piscean stuff, when you're looking at the profoundness of it all and how it can be just so intense and overwhelming. I think a lot of people with water signs have been going through this the last several weeks.
Correct.
Regardless, if you're looking for something, I know you want it now, but I think some of this might really fulfill itself and really show itself next June when we do the Jupiter Venus conjunction at 25 degrees. And I'm saying that to people to know the deeper, longer story. And I'm not saying nothing's not going to happen in the sense of something not progressing until June. But I think for those distinct individuals who have placements in water at 24, 25, 26 degrees, is just a reminder of that too. So yep.
Yeah, it's one more interesting thing that I always like is when moon is towards the end of the degrees and it is still not out of bound. Sorry, it's still not wide, of course,
Ah,
and that's a very interesting thing. And for me, it's again an opportunity to release. So, I mean, we all need to kind of declutter emotionally and physically, and environmentally at different stages in our lives, and we need windows to do that every year. And I think this is one of those good windows, like moving forward into the next year, I think just letting something go and cleaning up our space, especially with Cancer, Jupiter moon conjunction in Cancer. It's not just about kind of constantly expanding, but it is also trying to leave something that will make way for something new to come in, which obviously is the core of expansion.
Yes, it
So,
is. And I think it depends on the individual. When you were, let's say, while you're doing the cleaning and it's an emotional story, it's like sometimes, like I'm one of these people still, I'm a traditionalist, as in like I have photographs, actual photographs. If I were to open up a box of photographs, right? If I were to open up a box of photographs or certain things, and it happened to be while I was cleaning up something else, and I open it up, and then here come the memories and the stories,
yeah.
things I've forgotten, some things that I maybe subconsciously pushed away on purpose because I had to keep going, and the narrative was so overwhelming in another part of my life. And I opened up the box and I looked at the pictures, and there it is again. It didn't go away. It's always been there, the story. It's always been there, the emotional content, whether it's the sadness or sorrow or something, or even something that was joyful in the past. And in that moment, we come back, and it's again, I think with this Mercury transit, I think this type of story happens in stages. And it's here, when we do this transit Saturn and Jupiter, it's the third time Mercury Scorpio's done this. We did this
Yeah.
at the end of October. We did it again in the middle of the retrograde. And here's the third time. So in a sense, I feel like with what you're saying here, it's very powerful here because it's not the first time, it's the third time. And I think things become very clear as in like, now I could say goodbye, or now, I tie it up, and to feel the release that you're talking about there with the moon, and have that release. And I think for water signs, sometimes the challenge they have is they can habitually, let's say it's Cancer here too, they can habitually hold on to a story. And because even if it's a painful story, it's comfortable in its own way because it's habitual. So, we have
Yeah.
to find our ways to move through and complete water narratives. And I think here is a very powerful one, considering what Mercury's done here in this
Yeah.
transit. So it's and mind you, we're talking about this. We're a day and a half out of the full moon we talked about. You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
But there is also this dissolution element where there is the tendency to hold on to past or emotions with water. Saturn in Pisces is also about dissolution.
yeah,
So there is opportunity to let go of something. So where there is the tendency or the power to embrace or hold on, there is also the moment we decide that we have to let go. I think Saturn's uh, the rigid or stern belief with it in being in Pisces, there is this natural ability to process the dissolution as well.
yeah. I think if you meet any Pisces in your life who's been through it all, and they've lived their different identities or whatever, and you were to talk to them, they know that process that you're talking about, or they had to learn how to do the dissolution or the letting go or the finishing it.
Yeah.
Did everything else, and they felt everything else and experienced everything else, and they've carried other people through their emotional content stories. But in the end, there is the end itself, and the dissolution into the bigness and the oneness of
Yeah.
things, and so I'm really glad that you said that's yeah. And I think Saturn and Pisces here too I think maybe that's one of the bigger things to be reminded of with that transit, and what we will know here, for the last couple months while it's there, until it goes into Aries, is I think Saturn and Pisces has always known the roadmap. It's always known the bigger picture. And a lot of times,
Yeah.
some people don't want to see it, or they can, or some Pisces let's say, having Saturn in their lives, have forgotten what that is, and it's been reestablished again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, that's an interesting first week, by the way, from the lunation to there. And yeah, we talked. Oh, and we have to bring this up because we're going there, and it has to do with Mars. And this is what we will do it officially here. Um, It's all within days that this happens, and we'll do it for the forecast. You can see it visually here. That you could see on December 8th, at least 4:15 my time in the Pacific time zone. You see Mars at 25 degrees squaring Saturn, and this is what we were talking about earlier. Like this was building during the full moon, and we in the next right after the full moon, we come to this exact place, Ashwin.
Yeah. And every day is an aspect
Yeah,
after
every day in
the full moon.
December. Yeah. I'll be honest what my opinions are. I think I this is a difficult one. I think it's difficult if I look at it from Mars already squared the nodes. If I was looking at it from that perspective of that eclipse story, nodal story of Mars and then at the bendings, and then it keeps going, and then it runs into Saturn, there's the enthusiasm. I could be, and it's out of bounds. You know, what happens with an out of bounds Mars and then comes to see Saturn? You know, and for me, this could be I think it can be very difficult if you're, let's say, you're wearing the costume of the Mars here. What do you think, Ashwin?
I think I'll feel drained to start with. I think it's about understanding that we need breaks from time to time, and I think the problem here is that not problem, but the idea is to embrace the breaks because energetically, I think we'll feel drained. And ideologically, also, there is every possibility that we feel drained. And whatever we have or whatever we have developed over the past 2 or 3 months, despite a lot of challenges, suddenly it might feel like nothing is working out or something like that.
Mhm.
And it's both physical and emotional drain, and because of the fact that things not moving forward tangibly, I think we'll feel a little bit of demotivation with Saturn and Mars. But it's just a break. I think it doesn't mean that everything is crumbling around us,
Yeah.
but it is an opportunity for us to pick up some kind of gems that we can take forward. So it's not a failure, but it's a pivot or a shift that we need to make just after the culmination of the moon.
Yeah, no, that's well said. I'm glad that you balanced what I set out. The way to look at it, because in a sense, yes, it's temporary. You know,
Yeah, it is temporary. Obviously, it is
yeah,
temporary.
it's temporary. You know, I think sometimes though, like in situations like this, when we do with a full moon and everything afterwards, we're going and then boom, you know, for some it could be this. But yeah, it's like, hey, you know, sometimes the obstacles are there for a reason, you know,
Yeah,
and it's yeah, to slow down, you know, like, hey, slow down. I think Saturn knows the bigger picture of it all here. I just it
yeah,
does. And so anyway, that happens here on the 8th here of December. And we go a
so
couple days here, Ashwin, to another fundamental moment here. If we're going to stick into the Piscean realm of things,
yeah,
and it has to do with Neptune in Pisces
yeah.
here. Um,
Mm.
and
I
here,
think
Neptune, go ahead,
yeah,
Ashwin.
you have to talk about Neptune.
That could be a whole nother video. Neptune at 29 degrees here is stationing. This is the last run, Ashwin. This is it. 14-year
This is the
cycles
last
ending.
time that Neptune is in Pisces for many years.
Yep, this is a big one. This is the big station. So you see here within weeks, we have Mercury stationing, we have Saturn stationing in Pisces here. And we just take a note of Saturn. Saturn's still at 25 degrees. It's there, just holding still. But here's Neptune here, about to finish a run here. After the station here, when we get into the end or the beginning of the year, it's going to go into Aries. Ashwin, for me, situations like this, if we're just looking at the bigger picture and symbolically, it's pretty big if we were to think about it as in like 14-year cycle. And
Yeah.
you know, and Saturn leaving here soon, A lot of
Sure.
astrologers, a lot of us have talked about the astrology of this year and what it is, how we've had the hints in the middle of the year of when Saturn went into Aries, Neptune went into Aries, Uranus was in Gemini. You know, the step of moving forward into this new era, this new age of fire and air. And then we've had to go back here.
Yeah.
And here we are here. Now we're going to move forward and we take another step towards the new age. And again, I think this is a type of situation too, because of what has happened with a lot of water and a water trine and Mercury retrograde, that we're reminded maybe again of the bigger picture of the last 14 years of what has happened, let's say in the Piscean parts of our chart. We could bring in world politics, we could go look at whatever, right? But this is a definitely symbolic moment. And are things clear from a Neptunian perspective? I think they are, and they can here because of what happens, you know, with less than a day here with an aspect. And, you know, with it being with Mercury, we'll go to our next aspect with Mercury here waxing towards its third trine with Neptune. And if you wanted any help to be like, I guess, decisive or clear, and you have a Mercury in Scorpio that's been there for the third time with the stationing Neptune, I personally think that, you know, something like that is, I think there is at least a veneer that is gone. Like there's a filter that's dissolving away because of the preciseness of Mercury in Scorpio. What do you think about that, Aswin?
Nice. I think I like that how you phrased it. So something kind of emerging or unveiling itself. Yeah. No, I don't know about Neptune, but I think Mercury kind of making its way forward uh, from there into Capricorn itself is a step ahead, because from Scorpio to Sagittarius itself
Mhm.
is one step ahead, because Mercury in mutable sign, which is its natural nature as well. So it's an invitation to move forward with a little bit of uh, watchfulness, especially with Saturn Mars just separating from Saturn, and Mercury just entering Sagittarius. It is an invitation to kind of embrace a little bit of progress from feeling that there was no progress,
Yeah.
and also kind of leave what needs to be left, dissolution. I don't know much about Neptune, but I've heard a lot of people talk about Neptune and dissolution. But I think Mercury moving away from water into fire is also kind of an invitation to kind of embrace the dissolution that
Yeah,
that
and
we've
there's a
been through.
release there. You know, I listen, an aspect like this with Mercury, even square Pluto, or any Mercury Neptune aspect can be highly creative with the word. These are where songs are written. These are where poetry comes from too. If one were to look at some other ways of dealing with this, you know, if you look at somebody who's born with Mercury Neptune aspects, they have this in there. Sometimes you have to reel them back in because they go into fantasy land and they're not based in quite reality, and there's no boundaries, and they can, especially in water. But I think here Mercury's very strong. And I mean, since we're here, I mean, basically, Mercury turns direct on the 12th, the same day we're going in, or excuse me, on the 10th. Mercury trine Neptune officially happens on the 11th, but there's something else happening here, Ashwin. There's something else happening, and it has to do with this. And here, at the same time, we're dealing with Mercury opposite Uranus
Uranus.
in all this. And so it's not alone if we're going to take in outer body planets and talk about this stuff. I think, and mind you, this is the third time that Mercury is having an opposition,
Yes.
you know, here. And so, you know, this is a very interesting situation here. If I were to think of it, of Neptune and Uranus's influence on Mercury here, not only are we about to cross the threshold or to be released, you know, going into Sagittarius, but there's some brilliance going on here. There's some unpredictability here, and a
Yeah.
surprise possibly. I don't know for the world, but I think if somebody
Yeah.
personally has planets and degrees like this, I think especially with a planet like Mercury, who in the end we have to remember carrying the messages for us and tricking us at times. And especially coming on Mercury retrograde, where it's done its third, excuse me, not square to Neptune, but trine to Neptune, and then third here.
Correct.
There is something here, I think, that it not only reveals itself, but it could be a type of distilled clarity that it can move so fast and be out of your hands. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think that here, because I think because of Mercury's travels, that there's something deeper and it's very clear. I'm a huge Scorpionic person or fan and person. So when you have anything in Scorpion's hands where they're focusing on it, it's not at 50%. It's 100%. It's with complete, utter, passionate focus. And if one were to take a look at something like this and see the deeper picture of all this, I think Mercury's holding like the key to something. And maybe that key is to open the door to go into Sagittarius and eventually, take the story forward.
Open the doors of Erebor.
I was wondering if this was going to come up again. I was wondering if this is going to be a thing with you, but here it is. And there it is.
But yeah, I think it is very symbolic as well.
Yes.
So yeah.
Give us a quick explanation for those who don't know what you just said.
Okay, so if you go to The Hobbit, which is a prequel of The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, the 13 dwarves, 12 dwarves and one another person, Bilbo Baggins, they set off to reclaim the dwarves' homeland, which is the lonely mountain called as Erebor. And there is this key which is there with Gandalf. He gives it to Thorin Oakenshield, the leader of the dwarvish company, and they set out to reach Erebor. And the door, apparently the walls of the Erebor and the door are basically kind of camouflaged and it's not seen. And the keyhole can be seen only on one particular full moon, which appeared 200 years before. And luckily for the dwarves, that same full moon shines upon again. And that the last light actually falls on that keyhole, and the moment you miss this last light, you won't be able to open it again until the same moon shines. So they finally end up opening that door, and they enter inside only to find a dragon. So basically what we are dealing with here is that Mercury is holding the key, but as you pass on, Mercury is opposing Uranus. So there is a dragon that is waiting. So be mindful and watchful, and keep your key very safe, and stick to rationalism, and with little bit of realism as well.
I think this is good. By the way, you had a Uranus Mercury moment right there. It popped in. You had the reference come up there when we're talking about
Yeah,
this.
it always comes with
But I like what you said about, again, I think something like whenever we're dealing with planets and transits that are happening at the last degrees,
it's a keyhole.
Yeah, it's definitely it. It's like there's a long culmination. You get to this place, and it's the precise place. It's the moment, like you're talking about. At this moment, you have to do this. It's right there. I think Mercury's doing it. I think Mercury, honestly, here in the last month and a half, even when it started as transit into Scorpio there in October, and it went all the way to Sagittarius, came back to this whole thing. I think it's been the secret little player. People who know my astrology know I love Mercury retrogrades and what Mercury does, and how it carries. It carries narratives and its relationships with all the planets that it touches, and it carries those messages along, and and then we have a culmination here with an amazing moment with Uranus and Neptune. It doesn't get better than that, right? So, others could have opinions about this stuff, but yeah, what are we at we're at the 10th day of December here, basically, and saying that. We get into here, speaking of Mercury, Aswin, it's here on the 11th that Mercury goes into Sagittarius. And finally, well, cross this bridge and get out of the intensity and the internalness of Mercury and Scorpio and kind of bust out here. Another step of moving forward that the Sagittarius want here. I think if anybody's a Sagittarius, it's a celebratory moment here because, yeah, there's you are. You're like, okay, now, now I can, do this or have the feeling of it here. So this happens at 2:39 p.m. Pacific time on the 11th, 1740 here for those in other parts of the world. Mercury, it goes into Sagittarius. You happy about this one? You're dragging now.
Sure. It's a natural organic step forward where we are kind of dealing with, we have dealt with depth and transformation for a lot of time with Mercury in Scorpio for around 3-4 weeks or even more than that. And now we are entering into this natural mode of thinking with a lot of breadth rather than depth. So Sagittarius is all about breadth, the idea of preferring greater information or bigger ideas instead of details, which Mercury was focusing on when it was in Scorpio. So it's a natural organic shift. So now it's the time where we are kind of dealing with a lot of ideas or opportunities or the possible opportunities that we think we may have missed, or probably we never thought it would come to us, because there is a lot of prominence in Sagittarius. I think any sign that kind of holds a lot of planets is always very prominent. So here, I think the theme of this month, not just because Sun is in Sagittarius, it is truly a Sagittarius season with 4 planets in Sagittarius just before Mars enters Capricorn. So this is our preparation towards kind of going for an opportunity, but there also needs to be some kind of a ethical, philosophical, or moral framing in terms of how we are thinking and how we are progressing. So maybe just to kind of deal with a lot of truth in front of us can be a little overwhelming for us, but I think Mercury is going to help us rationalize and try to find out what is more needed for us and what is not really needed for us. Because Sagittarius, we are dealing with polarities here. Gemini, the opposite. Mercury is in detriment. So here Mercury is not about giving information, but here Mercury is considered to be weak. So Mercury only picks what it needs. And that is the rationalism that we need to embrace with Mercury in Sagittarius. There might be a lot of philosophical ideas, there will be a lot of ethical frameworks to follow, but what is contextually very necessary in our life at this point, I think Mercury kind of clearly splits it out and gives it to us. And with Mars entering Capricorn, we are going to gain energy to do the hard work to move forward.
Yeah, we got a nice little window here for the Sagittarians, and I really like what you said here too. I think it's also good for, there's a lot of mutability at this point. If we look at what's happening here in the sky, we have a lot of mutability happening here. It just so happens to be too that the moon's in Virgo when this happens, but to have some sort of like cutting it down and being focused. I think the Mercury and Scorpio story is carried there with Mercury there in Sagittarius. It doesn't just disappear, but now we could start to kind of look and understand and, at least say like, oh, we're on an adventure now. Like we just left the caves, now we're on the adventure here. So Mercury enters Sag here on December 11th. That happens there. We could say quickly too, within a couple days, I mean, we could do this really quick. That Mercury does a sextile to Pluto here in the beginning of its transit. For those who follow Pluto, do that. You can see Pluto at 2 degrees, and you can see the air-fire connection, which is the story of next year when we deal with that with air and fire. See Mercury kind of has a nice little rendezvous with Pluto and Aquarius, and they're talking about bigger things there, I think.
With a little bit of restlessness.
A little bit of restlessness.
Yeah,
I think anytime with Pluto's in there, you gotta have to be, you have to, it's not, it's not that easy with Pluto. I don't think, even if Pluto's bringing good news, I still think you have to always be careful. So, but yeah, a little bit of
cool.
restlessness. In one sense too, if one were to be affected, they have a lot of fire and air in their chart, you're getting a hint of next year, what's coming. If you
Yeah,
have anything in air and fire at 0, 1, 2 degrees, you got a little bit of hint in the middle of the year, but
sure.
these are important places next year with air and fire, the beginning degrees. So
Yeah, it's good because astrology can be really interesting because you said Mercury, Pluto with restlessness, but I was thinking of it from Mercury in the approaching the bendings of the lunar node,
thank you, Ashwin.
which
Yes.
also, yeah, I think so. I think we came to the same point looking at different aspects. So I think which
Yeah.
is very good.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have different perspectives, which enhances the show itself. Thank you so much.
No, and it's really good. This is really good, different perspectives. So us as a community of astrologers, we are at times exchanging our truths and our different perspectives, and sometimes debating them in a way. And so maybe in the Aquarius container, we could do that at the deeper level, and in the Sagittarius way, we're able to debate and exchange our different ways of looking at things and their truth and the philosophy behind it all.
Absolutely.
There. But good point, by the way, about what you said about the bendings. And for people who don't know what we mean that, let's say you happen to be watching this, bendings is basically in between the nodes here, the Ashwin. We talked about this earlier, right?
Yeah.
Venus already did this. The sun already did it. Mars already did it, squaring the nodes. And here comes Mercury to continue that story. We could say at the bendings, maybe for those who've been affected by the eclipse story this year that's been happening in Virgo and Pisces, situations like this, you got mutable. Here comes Mercury, is going to be approaching that. We're going to get to that probably in the forecast. That's going to happen. I'll just say it happens on the 20th. But yeah, then we get the Mercury sextile Pluto happens on the 13th, and then it's on the 14th that
Mars square Neptune.
got more square in here. Let me get this together here. Um, this happens on the 14th. Mars did a square to Saturn. Now it's doing one to Neptune.
Yeah.
Let me get my annotator. There's Mars. There's a last degree again. And there's Neptune at 29. What did I write here? I wrote something. I said scattered confusion. But when focused can be imaginative. I wrote that. I wrote a quick something here. You
Cool.
have any words to this? I know you're you're
No,
doing the Neptune thing. You're like, oh.
I think I am.
You're like,
Yeah,
it all
Neptune
works
thing.
out in the end.
It's
It's
up
like
to you. Yeah.
again, if we're thinking about planets moving through chapters like I do, and if we were to follow a Mars transit in the planets that it aspected along the way, I always think about how it's chapters of a story and how we carry some of those other planetary energies. And then we come to a situation with Neptune where maybe all that gets dissolved here at the 29-degree placement. And it's another moment here, Ashwin. It seems to be a theme here in the end of November into December about disillusion and letting go and all these types of things. And so that's a quick version, I will say, of something like this, is that, and also that we're adding that they're both at the last degrees of the sign, like a culmination and an ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um, yeah, I think as far as Neptune is concerned, I think the next year is a big year. With Saturn and Neptune,
yeah.
every astrologist is talking about Saturn and Neptune, so
Yeah,
it
that's
has to
what's
be something significant.
we're gonna get there. I mean, right now we're making this forecast. We're recording this at the end of November. We're talking about December. We're at the end of the year. We have a tendency as humans. I think those who follow this type of calendar, that at the end of the year, you're always looking back at the past. It just so happened to be that a lot of transits and water and stuff and retrograde planets, and you're like, yeah, we're looking at the past, but it's enhanced. But we do that at this time of the year. and then we can't help but start to look, next year. But the way the transits are happening kind of fits this here at the end of the year. Just want to say again, that happens, Mars square Neptune happens on the 14th. And then we have more Mars here that we're going to talk about, and Mars will do its ingress that you mentioned earlier, Aswin.
Yeah, I love Mars in Capricorn.
Yeah, who doesn't? I mean, let me share this. I hope everybody likes this. I mean, this is good stuff right here. Mars goes into Capricorn on the 14th at 11:33 p.m. Pacific, or going into the 15th for most of the world. And I'll circle that. So yeah, you like this, huh, Aswin?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think it kind of fuels the purpose. So we have this ability to work hard with a lot of discipline. Capricorn is all about meticulousness, and Mars is the drive. And we have this meticulous drive or some kind of an unwavering focus that helps us to put in sustained effort towards something. I think that is the key of Capricorn. So Mars in Capricorn is all about gaining far more endurance than what we had before. So this 30 to 45 days with Mars is stay in Capricorn is not going to be impulsive as Mars in Cancer. It is exactly the opposite sign. So it is all about kind of giving up impulse and acting with a lot of purpose and ambition, with as much speed in terms of how we are working, because Capricorn is naturally about hard work. So Mars is this this driving force behind that hard work that we are going to put in with Mars and Capricorn. And it will be very interesting because Mars is also going to trine and sextile the lunar nodes from its square last month. So which means there is this beautiful balance between what we need and also kind of focusing at the same time on leaving something away and constantly kind of clearing the path as we are progressing. So now we are not stopping to clear the path. We are kind of clearing the path during our journey, and there is no stopping with Mars in Capricorn. So the desire is fueled by Mars, and the ability to kind of cut something off while we are moving on is also present. So there is this good balance. There is no conflict between what we need and what we don't need.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. And for any people watching that have been affected by the eclipse story we're talking about here, now we have some help. We have some help to move through and get through here with Mars and Capricorn. This is a building aspect here. This is a type of Mars being a Capricorn can do anything, can build anything. Any obstacles that comes their way, no problem. They'll take care of it. They'll find a way. They have a plan, and they enact the plan, and they're fueled. It's fueled. Traditionally, right? Mars is in its exaltation here. It's in a great position here. Interesting way to start the end of the year, considering the other transits that we've talked about, Aswin, and then its relation to the nodes and some of the other things it's going to do here. I'm pretty psyched for the aspect. Aswin, way back in another part of my life, I couldn't stand any planet for some reason, Capricorn transits. I don't know what it was. I had some experiences in my life. I don't know what it was, but that changed. And so whenever this happens, I'm excited for it. Not to say anything bad about Mars being in Sagittarius or anything like that. But if, we're astrologers, those who are learning astrology or watching and things like that, hey, we're dealing with some rare moments here. It doesn't happen all the time, but here we are at the end of the year. And so, yeah, that happens here on the 14th into the 15th here. And, for those who look at the rest of the month with Mars and getting into January, there's some fascinating stuff that happens in the beginning of the year with Mars too, and the Capricorn birthdays. But we're going to stick here, Aswin.
Yeah.
Unless you got something, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I have one more thing to say with Mars and Capricorn, because see, it's important to note that Mars is in the Saturn-ruled sign, and Saturn becomes the dispositor of Mars, and Saturn is the planet of structures and sequences and everything. With Saturn in Pisces, we are still kind of looking at the crumbled structures and seeing what we can take from there. What is the best thing that we can take from there? And Mars in Capricorn helps us build these temporary structures for us to kind of, carry us forward until Saturn enters Aries. So I think that is another aid or support, very, very strong support that we have with Mars in Capricorn. So
That's
yeah,
real. I'm so glad you said this, because if I'm thinking about anybody who's at this point still in waterland, or they're still dealing with emotional stories, because it works that way. Some people are like, oh, I can't get out of that place, and they're still there. Neptune's still in Pisces and Saturn. I mean, Mars and Capricorn is like, come on, we got to do this. Let's go. Let's go. And it gives you, the power to do it, to move the story, to move that part of your life. Because I know we're talking generally for a forecast, but there are those who might be affected by these water transits and certain things where, they're not jumping out of bed the next day when things are moving, like when Mars leaves or whatever. Some people don't. But sometimes you do. You have to answer to something. You have to answer it. And if you are called to answer a Saturnian story, and then you need the power to take the step forward, to move, well, doesn't get any better at Mars being in Capricorn. And then, and like you said, there's this expositor Saturn there, sitting there at 25 degrees. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, Aswin. And for those watching, if you need something to to get you going, this is it, I thought there was other aspects to get you going, but again, we all have different stories and different charts, Aswin. So
sure, yeah.
Yeah, we do. So we should mention here, Aswin, really quick. It's been too long here, but we should mention, because just to do it, that for those here, that Saturn will then, square, or the sun will square Saturn here at 25 degrees. We just got to mention that. We'll do it really quick for those who happen to be having a if you think about this, Aswin, somebody with 25 degree mutable sun is probably
Like
dealing. Are you pointing to yourself?
Yeah, sun towards the end of Sag.
I didn't mean to do that for everybody watching. I completely forgot about Aswin's chart. But sitting here, this isn't the first time you're having Saturn and Pisces square your sun or opposing your sun. Like if you're a Virgo sun, and this is kind of the last one. If you happen to have here, having to deal with what happened this year or earlier this year. So, I don't know if it's a celebratory moment, but usually sometimes when we have a Saturnian transit that happens somewhere in our chart, usually happens 3 times, or it's 2, but it's concentrated. I mean, here's like the third, quote unquote, third time-ish, it's like you're getting done. The story's going to switch up. Not going to have this anymore. And you kind of have Jupiter helping you out here, like in one way that there. But anyway, considering that Jupiter rules this, what do you think, Aswin, considering it's personal here? What do you think about that?
I think it's sun is awareness. More than anything, sun is awareness or consciousness. So I see sun as this Agni. Agni is fire. And Rig Veda says that there are 2 dimensions of fire. So one is flame and the other is light. So the flame, light is the result of flame. So the fire is burning inside and flame is coming outside. So and it kind of presents something that is very important in terms of course correction or purifying or altering our consciousness. Consciousness in the sense awareness or knowledge, whatever we know, is being tested at this point. And it doesn't mean that there is going to be a test that comes from outside, but it is going to be a test or shift in our awareness or slight change in our awareness with our own experiences and working with what we are doing on a daily basis. And I think that is where things will change. We are becoming more aware, and our awareness is taking a new shape. because of a conflict that is provided by Saturn, and that is this square, Saturn square, uh, Sun in Sagittarius. So it's this ability to kind of perform our duty despite having to keep our individuality and keep our own
Uh-huh.
beliefs or thought process, but still not give up on our duty.
Yeah.
I think that is the key thing. So
Is
holding that resolve, but still carry that integrity.
yeah,
Uh,
that's a realization, you know?
it is a realization.
Yeah, that's a realization right there. I believe you. I'm taking it because you know it's happening to you.
It's. I think there will be a lot of moments where someone holds mirror in front of us during this period when Sun squares Saturn, and it will be important for us to look at that mirror, and only if we look at it, we'll be able to change and be more aware.
Yeah, no.
So,
That's a great way to put it. You know,
yeah,
sometimes we all have our Saturn stories, and I think people Saturn has a stigma, rightfully so, by the way, in astrology. I mean, but if one can look into the Saturn mirror and in a sense get past the fear of it and finally like look in it, you know, uh, I think that's the realization part, you know, that happens. So yeah, well said, Ashwin. Um, that happens
yeah.
on the 16th, and we get to the 19th, Ashwin, and we get to something here.
It's the new moon in Sagittarius.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting new moon. We have the moon which will be squiring Saturn, new moon square Saturn. The new moon is also squaring, I mean, past the nodal square. So the tension is not necessarily as much, but there is still some kind of reality check that we are holding with this new moon, because still Saturn is squaring the new moon. It's a past square. It is a separated square, but still I see that as a square aspect. So we are dealing with some kind of residual drama or challenge or burden that we have carried over a very long time, and somewhere down the line it is stopping us from starting. But there is going to be comfort that is also coming in for us to engage in something meaningful, profound, and also new, because Venus is also there in Sagittarius along with the moon. So
Yep.
Mercury, Venus, and moon. So moon is the emotional mind. Mercury is the rational mind in Indian astrology. So there is this conjunction of heart and mind that is happening in Sagittarius with this new moon. So whenever or wherever you've been having a lot of challenges in terms of bridging your heart and mind, I think now there is a lot of opportunity for us to kind of bring things together where both our heart and mind says the same thing, both of it wants the same thing. And Venus is all about Venus is we, and the moon is me. So this is what we mentioned in our book, the book that I wrote with Tara Hall. So we associate moon with me and Venus with we. So we are able to bring together a lot of things. So if we are actually dealing with someone, we'll be able to kind of initiate or co-perform something with other people in our lives without any challenge. But there is this initial roadblock or the gate that we need to open to see the beauty behind everything. So I think this new moon is an opportunity for us to kind of start looking at the real beauty behind the challenges that we
Huh.
have faced or facing at
Oh,
this point.
wow. That's interesting. I'm glad you brought in the other different views here. I like the me we thing there too. And you know, it's interesting. I think with Sagittarius energy, there's a part of them and that story that does need to walk the path alone, right?
Yeah.
That is part of it, but it's fun when somebody else is there. You
Oh,
know,
it's the train journey, right?
oh,
Yeah. it's a train journey. I have to go to a destination and I might kind of talk with someone, and the person might get down in some other station, but I might have to travel along. So we have companions who kind of help us keep up our spirits so that we don't have to travel alone. The
Yes.
ultimate path is the self, but we have some experiences with other people along the way that kind of embellishes the entire journey itself.
Yeah, and usually if you hear like any story or movie or novel when there's a human on the journey and a path, that's what it is. You're alone sometimes, and then you at the crossroads, or you run into other people and they're part of the story and they change and the exchange that and I think when we think from a basic fire perspective too, of how fire I think needs to move, and it simmers and it builds up and it roars, but the expression of the element itself. And I think there too, when you are with someone else, let's say Sagittarius is on that trip, and there's some people that on that part of the leg of the trip, they're there, it's interesting. I think when one walks alone, and depending where they are alone, and with their thoughts, their code, their truth, their philosophy, what it is, it doesn't stay the same, or at least it's
Yeah.
temporary. Usually when you're running into things externally, let's say it's other people, that code or philosophical something is not only tested, but changes. Or it's
Yeah.
influenced by external truths,
Sure.
go ahead.
No, no, I was just kind of, it
Yeah,
was
I
good to
love
hear
this
from you.
train thing. I love this train thing you're saying. It's a great example.
You
So,
know,
so
I'm reminded of The Alchemist as well.
yeah, oh yeah,
Uh,
that's a great book. Yeah, yeah,
Alchemist is, yeah, I don't want to bring in another lot of things here and bore people, but yeah, I think it is fun to have people from time to time, but the path itself is, our path is different and someone else's path is different. We just kind of hold hands for the time being,
yeah,
and yeah.
yeah. No, I like that. Yeah, here, December 19th at 5:43 p.m. Pacific time for those 2043. I gotta say something here, Ashwin. I'm gonna throw this in here. Is basically also in this lunation, we got Neptune. For those who are doing Neptune stuff, we'll throw this in here that Neptune is squaring this lunation. And throw that in there. We're also going to throw in here, am I correct by saying this? Ashwin, too, since we cannot help, but we got to mention Mercury here in one
Yeah.
sense. Yes,
Yeah,
this part of the train trip, Ashwin, is this waxing square that's happening to the nodes, the bendings, as we talked about earlier. I
exactly.
think it's interesting here with Venus and the moon. Like, to go back to the story, there is part of the story here in this new moon that's there. Um, I think here Mercury is saying things. I think there is this exchange that's happening. Well, I mean, one way sometimes I look at something at the bendings or squaring the nodes, especially with something like a planet like Mercury, which, by the way, it was several days before this was at 6 degrees. It was kind of around the time when we did the Sun a square Saturn part of the conversation, that Mercury
Sure.
hit 6 degrees, and that was the place that it started to go backwards weeks ago. And Mercury's crossed this place, and has a lot of experience now on this journey, and then even from 0 degrees to this point, but it does square the nodes in part of the lunation here. And I personally think that there's a conversation that happens. There's a certain type of conversation that Mercury and Sag has to say something, and is carrying something from, or bridging the gap between the north and the south nodes. And I think there is something possibly that can enter the profound realm of things when it comes to the messaging of something. And I'm only saying this because of the journey that Mercury's been on for almost 2 months now at this point. So that is just something I wrote in my notes. That the official square is going to happen the next day, basically on the 20th. I also wrote, that sometimes with the Sun here in Sagittarius too, and Neptune being there, if someone was to take this into account, that it could make you, maybe make the Sun feel a little weak in a sense, or impotence, not the word, but just kind of dissolve it a little bit. After listening to you, Ashwin, and thinking about the Sagittarius journey here, because it's about to change up. The birthday month for Sagittarius is going to end here in a day or and a half or whatever is going to happen. We're going to show that. I think it's interesting here at this point with all the aspects that Venus makes, the moon or sun is made here, that again, there is still I think in the background are holding the story of the switch happening, of the a bigger Jupiterian story that we know must go forward now and will, but sometimes dreams are lost. Sometimes the vision of something that we originally had, it doesn't stay the same. And so sometimes for me, when I look at Neptune aspects like this or whatever, there could be part of this for some people. I think those who are at later degrees. I think that the dream and the vision and the way that it was initially started, it doesn't mean it's lost. It means that it's changed. And sometimes a planet like Neptune kind of takes the edges off and dissolves some of that. Those are some thoughts that I had about
Good.
that.
Awesome.
Yeah. That just a reminder, you could see the time here, 5:43 p.m., new moon in Sagittarius at 28 degrees. So interesting in the notes here. You threw me for a curveball, Ashwin, here. You threw me for a curveball in the notes that we wrote for this forecast, because the next aspect that you wrote, or ingress, I should say, you have here on the 20th, Lilith enters Sagittarius.
Yeah, I don't know what Lilith means, but I just kind of, if you know.
You went there. You somehow, you don't know what it means, but okay, I'm curious. I'm really curious, Ashwin. But why did you put it in there? What got you to that point to type it in to our spreadsheet? What happened?
I don't know. I was just looking at all the aspects and I found this, and I just left out asteroids and included something. So I thought I've been hearing this, and I heard Lynn Bell talk about this in England, and yeah, and since then, although I never used, I just kind of always kept myself open to insights about it.
Okay, I was just curious.
I don't know. I don't know what it means.
Yeah, no. For me, I used to do a little bit of work, but sometimes we deal with, Lilith is showing like the shadow sides of things. And we're dealing with like, the dark feminine in sense, in the more modern terms. With a lot of people, let's say in pagan world, witchcraft world, look at Lilith as a guide into that, and to dealing with the darker feminine side or the darker side of things, and having to process something like that, and to look at the behavior of that and be able to alter it. And that's a quick thing off the top of my head, I will say. I just thought it was interesting that you put it in there, and that, that I think, yeah, you should follow that. Like now that you don't know what it is, that you should maybe do a little Sagittarius research trip into the land of Lilith, and who knows who you might encounter and what shadow side of you that maybe you have revealed to yourself. So that's my quick something on that. Okay.
Yeah, but thanks for
Yeah. And let's see. Well, in the future forecast, if it pops up again for you, so you have something to say, you'll come back to me. You'll come back.
Yeah,
with this.
I'll be sure to leave it up.
Yeah. On the 20th, did we do Sun Square Neptune? We kind of hold on a second. I could pull it up here the way I do it on this. By the way, we're using Astro Gold. It's a Mac OS program. Great program that both of us use on the phone and on desktop. Here, just for what we have here to talk about, because we talked about Saturn Sun Square earlier, and let me pull this up. And here we have Neptune. There it is at 29. It just keeps coming up, doesn't it, Ashwin? It's there. It keeps coming up. Here's the sun coming out of its lunation, and it will do its square. It just had its realization moment, its mirror moment, like you mentioned with Saturn, right? And now it's running into Neptune. Does the mirror
Yeah,
dissolve? Is it many mirrors, Ashwin? What is it here? What
I don't
happened?
know. I just think like whatever we saw with Saturn, the
Yeah.
difficult parts or something that we need to change, we need to dissolve and leave out the bad things. Maybe that is the thing. I don't know because yeah. Yeah, I think you're on mute.
Oh, I think I don't know is good. You know, if in one way I'm gonna have my funny version of this. Sometimes if 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 the quest was to know, we started a quest like Sagittarius Centaur shoots, it's at his bow and arrow and it's centaur and it shoots for something in the sky and it focuses like I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna find out everything about this, I'm gonna go on my journey. And here, and they know, and they know. And then they get to the end. Maybe knowing is not knowing anything. Maybe in the end, it doesn't matter what you know. After everything, maybe things are just the way they are. So,
Sure.
just a quick thought there, you know.
Yeah, I think it's philosophical. Good. I think Plato or Aristotle said the same thing. Like knowing what you don't know is the real knowing.
Yep. And at times I think on the adventure of something like that, or the quest of something like that, we come to the deepest wisdom, don't we? We come to the deepest
Yeah,
wisdom
sure.
in the life story, like humbled but centered and focused. You know everything, but you don't know anything at all. And the liminal place of what that is. And you know, maybe it's a thing too here with a 29-degree Piscean anything that Saturn's going to do here in months, you know,
Yeah.
and
Again,
ending 14 years and ending a 2.5 year Saturn cycle, all this and going into different eras and a Neptune Saturn conjunction that's setting off something new. It's huge. It's a 0 degrees, you know, Aries point. You know, we have to remember what things can't go to in the end before we start something else, you know. And so I'm the type of person who just when I thought I knew it all,
there is a
I
humbling moment.
yeah, you're like, you know what? I don't know anything, and we surrender. You know, we surrender.
That's a better thing. Even I have something like that. But one more interesting tidbit is I don't know what because I don't follow the outer planets. But Saturn Neptune conjunction at 0 Aries is exact sextile of the great conjunction of 2020 in
Yes,
early Aquarius. I don't
definitely.
know what it means, but I think it's the alteration of the socio-political, socio-cultural, and socio-economic themes. Maybe there is some kind of an alteration or shift in paradigms that we have seen over the past 5 years since the Great Conjunction.
No, I agree with you. I mean, if we're going to bring in, you know, you're talking about that conjunction that happened at 0, and we're talking about a trine that's happening between Saturn and Jupiter. It's a chapter of that story. You know, we're in the trine part of that story
Correct.
as we're going towards that conjunction. Yeah, definitely.
I
Definitely.
think next will be Venus, Square Saturn,
Yep. And let me pull that up.
conflicting realities,
These charts are
Venusian
now going to have
realities.
Lilith in them because I put it in there. Just so you know, she's made now she's in here for good.
I
It's
thought
not,
you kind of yeah you were a lot more proficient than me in modern.
yeah, no. Since we did it, we're going to talk about it. But yeah, we have the Venus square Saturn. We have basically, you know, the Sagittarian planets are kind of like how they're kind of bringing up the story here. Sag, they're kind of going one by one. Here is let me get my marker here. There is 25, and here is Saturn at 25. Sometimes, Ashwin, I've seen people with Saturn square Venus stuff like in relational stuff, like the reality comes in. There's a certain realizations. I've seen people like get married. I've seen people get divorced. I've seen people sign contracts, you know, like here are
Yeah,
the rules, or here's what's in play, or are you serious or are you not? You know?
correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
pivot. So I see squares as pivots or turning points in the matters that the two planets represent. So Saturn represents limitation, structures, and sequences, and reality, time. And Venus represents relationships, union, collaborations, comfort, luxury, etc. So we are learning to deal with, uh, the bringing together of the two, the structure of the relationship, or the general nature or theme of the relationship, or the time that we spend for the relationship as a couple from relationship perspective, and
Yeah.
how much time we devote ourselves for comfort or self love. All these things will be, coming into prominence. So especially in relationships, and those people who are in newer relationships, I think there will be a stronger reality check, especially if there are planets in Pisces and Sagittarius, or any mutable signs, where suddenly there will be this reality in the relationship, like how much time they're spending together, and how much it is affecting their everyday life, and how they need to rationalize the time that they spend together, or the jobs that they do for each other. So I think all this will kind of take the relationship into a more realistic and a stronger zone than the honeymoon period itself.
Yeah, Venus and Sagittarius is sometimes can be all over the place, going from here to there in 2 to 3 different directions. And Saturn's like, "Hey, come on, you need to focus. Need to focus."
Okay.
Sometimes too, it's aspects like this too. If somebody is dealing with some financial matters, and maybe basically metaphorically the bank account has been leaking or been spread too thin, and Saturn's here is a reality check, like, hey, you need to corral your spending, or the extravagance, the buoyancy of your spending, the kind of thing.
OMC, I like that.
Yeah, like, the Venus and Sagittarius, like, oh, we need to, let's get this, and this will be fun, and let's take this trip, and blah, blah, blah. And then Saturn's, wait a second, we've already spent all this. Again, anybody who's got something at 25 degrees mutable here, you got another chapter in your story right here, with Venus coming through here. But again, I like Saturnian aspects for the most part, because of the way of, like, the things that you said, Aswin, and I think we have to answer to things, and we have to be real about things, and we, in a sense, have to commit to those things, and there's reasons for it, and also too, can't forget sometimes with Saturnian situations, there is a discipline that is required, and discipline in life, I think a lot of times, this is my own personal stuff here, when we have discipline in a life, I think it's our guide, and becomes something even bigger. Since we're talking about Saturn and Pisces here, as we're dealing with the spiritualness of things, the bigger things in life, we do need a regimen and a discipline. My personal view on something like that. That happens on the 20th at 9:08 p.m. or the 21st for many people all over the world, which brings us, Aswin, to
The final frontier.
the final frontier. And that's funny. Whoever thought that the sun going into Capricorn would be the final frontier, but here we are, the final frontier in the final month of this 12-month calendar year, with the sun going into Capricorn, which in the northern hemisphere is the winter solstice, and in the southern hemisphere it is the summer solstice for all our people in the southern hemisphere. For all the people I know are in Australia and other parts of the world, it's probably hot, really hot right now.
Yeah,
Cold.
not so in Antarctica.
Yeah. But we have this place, Ash, from the sun going into Capricorn. There's a reality here now coming out of the Sagittarius world, considering, the transits that we've had. And we're at a cardinal point in the astrology world. 3 months from now, at this point from this chart, Ashwin, we will do the 0 degrees Aries cardinal point.
Correct.
We do. Anything you want to say real quick about this?
Sun in Capricorn, it throws light into what really matters, and the areas where we need to spend our time channelizing our vitality towards what is actually productive, rather than deprioritizing and staying all over the place. And I think Sun in Capricorn is going to be this, uh, this light, that we needed the most to see the reality, and also to kind of be aware of what is going on around us, and yeah, travel with much more confidence.
Yeah, I think we're dealing with confidence and practicality now.
Yes.
Again, we love the buoyancy of Sagittarius. We still got planets in Sag. I mean, you know, we got Mars there, or excuse me, Venus and Mercury here. We still have to do, but yeah, there's a certain type of groundedness that's coming in here that is needed. Considering the transits we've already talked about from the end of November till now, I think really I'm being biased here, but this is, I think, welcoming.
Yes.
When we're transitory, leaving eras and leaving major cycles, uh, how we do it, we need places to stop, to take notice of what we have and what we've built and what we can build, what is of value there, and it's being practical and smart about things. And Capricorn shows us how to do this, and it actually shows us how to, I think, show up in the world and what we need to demand of ourselves and how we match that, externally in the world, and how that manifests
Yeah,
even in
excellent.
material things or so on and so forth. So, what are you laughing about? You like this? What's on your mind?
Yeah, I think it was very good. I think I think it's a natural organic progression with Venus into Capricorn, like
Hmm?
valuing our effort, right?
Yeah.
So I think valuing our effort is a nice keyword to understand Venus and Capricorn. Putting value or having a tag on our prices. So if you're an astrologer, think about rationalizing your prices, or maybe uh, see if you're able to kind of increase your offerings and have an entry point for people and rationalize your offerings. I think
I,
that's a good idea with Venus and
Yeah,
Capricorn.
I think that's interesting what you're saying there too, because like on this chart here, like on the 23rd, Venus, before she goes into Capricorn, is going to do the Neptune situation, right? And I think this is like an initiation to what you're saying here, Ashwin. Venus,
Yeah.
Neptune. By the way, this could be anybody watching sometimes with Venus, Neptune aspects. Let's say you have a few drinks and you meet someone and they just look like this is the person for the rest of my life. I think this is, you got to be careful with stuff like that with Venus Neptune, because this could be haze under, yeah. Could be deceiving, right? It could be poetic and beautiful, but I think it could be deceiving and all that. And I'm saying all this stuff because, Ashwin, because of what you're saying about when Venus does go into, I wrote Venus kind of has its Saturnian lesson and boundary when Venus squared Saturn in Pisces. Neptune might make that unstable or give the appearance of it, right? I wrote some of that, and I go, it's mutable illusions, and that we should need to slow down for a second and just understand where we're actually standing. And I think, and you could say something on this, and I'll go to the next chart because about the ingress that you were mentioning.
No, I think Neptune Venus square, I'm happy with what you said.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's basically then the next day, then we have what you were talking about, and here is Venus. Here the reality comes in. Um, the fantasy of the night before, the Venus Neptune
Yeah.
connection. All of a sudden, it's like, wait a second, what did I say, and did I really mean that, or this is serious now, or we mean what we say, and when we're doing relational processes, there is a structure to it, and there's a negotiation, Ashwin.
Yes. I think
It's
it's a carry forward from Venus and Sagittarius, with it's just fresh coming after the square with Saturn. So
Yep.
after dealing with the realities of the relationship, I think there needs to be some hard work that is necessary to strengthen or fortify the union, and that is what I think Venus and Capricorn represents. Although it is a little dark now, it might be difficult to see comforts immediately because Venus is still very much under the beams.
Yeah.
But once Venus crosses the sun, I think the passion will ignite because of Venus-Mars conjunction much later, which we'll talk about.
I'm really glad you said that, because sometimes when we hear about passion and things in astrology, we don't necessarily hear Capricorn. But I think there's a deep, passionate type
Yeah,
of way within the Capricorn thing.
meticulous passion.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And it's just not expressed like in many other signs where I think it's obvious, but I think it's passionate and the potential to be long lasting. As you're saying here of what's building up here, Ashwin, yeah, the Venus is under the beams. Mind you, while we've been doing this forecast, Venus disappeared into the sky earlier, when it was in Sag. It kind of actually, I think that pretty much the day we're forecasting this, we're doing this on the 26th of November, 27th. This is Venus's last appearance. It starts to disappear here and movement here and goes under the beams that you talked about. And eventually there will be this conjunction that's going to happen with the sun and eventually with Mars here. And something is definitely solidified and becomes very clear. And as a reminder, all this Capricorn stuff that we're looking at here, if my pen will work, right here, and soon Mercury will be there. We can't forget that it's all ruled by a 25-degree Saturn. It still hasn't moved yet. It's still there, and it's about to. It's about to go to 26. So we have this. Saturn's been back here on this whole forecast in the background, Ashwin. It's been just sitting there in the background, very strong and very clear, I think, after its retrograde situation. It's all the planets and the aspects have made to Saturn. Basically, we're going to talk about one here in a second to end the month, basically, and we'll just get to that. Let me pull that up. And it's here that on the 29th, now Mercury then does its square. Let's Mercury here. And this is interesting here because 26, this Saturn finally moves. At 26 here, and we have some movement from Saturn, and we have the square here that happens.
Yeah.
29th, 30th for the rest of the
Yeah. I think Mercury in Capricorn is Mercury is just about to enter Capricorn, but I think there is this reality check in mercurial matters of our life. So I don't think it's necessarily a time to kind of push forward as far as the agreements or something like that is concerned. So we are still dealing with some realities, and there is still some checks that is to be done in our everyday process. I always relate Mercury with our everyday process.
Yep.
So it's important to deal with our time. It's important to deal with our calendar. It's important to deal with our daily structures with Saturn and Mercury square, especially with Saturn in its last leg before another 30 years when it will enter Pisces. So it's important to deal with some of the long-term realities that we want to maintain and rationalize them as soon as possible as Mercury prepares to leave Sagittarius.
Yeah, I think it's interesting here because I think sometimes too with the Mercury Saturn aspect, like a square like this too, there's a certain type of, it could be a weight. Sometimes, Mercury in Sagittarius, it's in its detriment, it's kind of the way it's functioning there, but it'll still try to be optimistic, right? It'll still try to do, but when it runs into something like Saturn here, it can be a weight, and it could be a heavy type of pondering that happens, in situations. It might not be as optimistic as it can be, but in this situation, because of what we've talked about for this whole month here, and what like the role that Saturn's played, there's a reality check, but I think it's a great one, and I think it's one that is needed at this stage, and it just so happens, we're at the end of the month and end of the year. And if somebody's in between getting ready for New Year's, and you're pondering what, everyone's going to do it. They're going to be with friends or family, or they're going, what happened? This year went by so fast. And we look back, and we have this moment here. We look back before we start to go forward, and, Mercury's going to go into Capricorn, and then we'll be doing all these Capricorn planets will eventually be doing sextiles to Saturn and Pisces, and the story starts to really move there, Ashwin, I think here. But right at the end of the year, we have a little moment with Mercury with Saturn, and maybe we're thinking about the bigger picture, but we're having to
just don't know how to move forward.
Yeah, Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
it reminds me of another Lord of the Rings. In before, I mean, just as soon as the Fellowship is formed, everyone leaves, and Frodo Baggins leads the way. And suddenly he doesn't know where to go, so he asks, "Is it left or right, Gandalf?" So that is the situation where we are. Like I mean, we know the bigger picture is there because of Sagittarius,
yeah.
but it's just that we haven't found the way, whether it is left
Yeah,
or
no,
right.
no, that's
And
well said. Well said. And I also think too, yeah, from a pondering perspective and the end of the year perspective, we all do it like, what happened? And then let's say we're astrologers or whatever level of astrology we are, we're looking at the transits. Obviously, a lot of astrologers right now, they're already looking at next year, right? But you're gonna stop and you're gonna like, what happened? We had these eclipses in the springtime. We had Mercury in Aries and Venus retrograde in Aries, and they went 0 degrees Aries, and they went back over the 29-degree Pisces, and they went back over that again, and eclipses were involved. And
yeah,
Saturn went into to Aries at the end of May, and Neptune was already in Aries. Now the glimpse, and then Uranus and the like all this stuff. You start to think about this, and then everything went backwards again, and then these eclipses here. It seems like it happened so fast, and it's how I think when we take note of things and understand, like, what does one do, at these moments, and you have your memories, you look at things, and I'm the type of person, be real, like, well, um, those challenges happened. And what did I learn and what did I figure out? And what is a part of me now? And what do I let go? This whole thing when we talk about what we take forward and what we let go. And come the 31st and the whole world is celebrating whatever time zone they are, Ashwin. There's always
yeah,
that little moment of like a goodbye. And then, well, this year, or what's coming up next. And from the astrological point of view, Ashwin, there's definitely something coming up next. We've been talking for a year and a
big
half
things.
about outer body planets being at the last degrees of their sign and transitions. And we're at this point, we're walking through the gate, the bridge, the crossing it over, Ashwin, right?
It
So,
is.
yeah.
And I think by by the end of December, whatever we have with us is what we were always meant to have. I think that is a keynote that we would probably end this amazing session. Like, I mean, audience will say if it was amazing, but I think it was amazing for me to kind of do this with you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank
No.
you so much.
Yeah, no, it's good to chat it up. We did a long one, but again, you surprised me again, Ashwin. You got Lilith you threw in there. You got some more quotes. I
I don't know.
I'm
I don't know. I don't prepare to talk about astrology because it feels like it's difficult if I prepare. So I kind of come with spontaneous ideas. But the Lilith, I just opened astro.com and astroseek and saw whatever is best. So I put it
I
down.
know I love it. It's like for anything here, like in life. I just close this out. It's like the thing of knowing, but I don't want to know. But I'm gonna walk down the path. And
Yeah.
it's amazing when I'm still open and I'm not dogmatic, like it must be this way or this way, that I'm still open. And that's, I think, the amazingness of life is what
Yeah.
comes to you. It's good to be prepared. At the same time, you want to allow mystery and anything to come towards you and to accept something like that. And I think it's at the core of life and the core of creativity. So I
Yeah.
understand the way you're walking there with astrology. I totally get it, Ashwin. I totally get it. It's to leave
Yeah.
spontaneity, to let it do its thing. So
Yeah. The universe gives its call. But I think with that, you can reach out to Nicholas at sparklesofgold.com. And yeah, he
yeah,
has a YouTube channel. We both have a YouTube channel. And yeah, it's capisar.org, and email address will be info@capisar.org. So I think that will be the good place for us to end. And we look forward to seeing you in 2026.
See you in 2026.